if you're thinking about casting a name actor, you have to ask yourself, why? Why would I want to do that? And why am I doing this project? And what do I want to have happen? Because I've done it and because I've cast this name actor. Now I'm going to tell you that casting name actors in your project is going to be a function of relationships, the quality of the material, and your experience. Those three things are going to determine, can you get those name actors to be interested in working for you or not? They're all interested in working. They all want to work. Trust me, no actor in this business doesn't want to work. They all want to work. But they want to work in projects that are interesting to them, are well written, that they perceive are going to be at a level that they're at, that are either going to advance their career or are not going to embarrass them. So that means two things right off the bat. A, the script has to be really well written and the part has to be really interesting to them. And B, when they meet with you, either you as the director or you as the producer, you have to have a really clear vision of the project. What this project says, how it's going to be marketed, where it's going to go, what you want it to do, why you're doing it. Answers to those first two questions again. Why you're doing it and what you want to have happen because you did it. So that they feel confident in you as the filmmaker. Because then if they feel confident that you have a vision for the project and the project is well written, they're going to want to jump on board that project. Now, how do you even get to them in the first place? That's relationships. And if you don't have those relationships, then you're going to need to hire a casting director, because the casting directors are the people who have those relationships. I've just been lucky up to this point. I have developed relationships with people over the course of working in the business as an actress. I have developed relationships with people who are, you would consider names or semi-names. My husband, who's an editor, and edits all my stuff, by the way, because he's like the bomb. And his bread and butter is editing actor demo reels, as well as director demo reels. But he edits actor demo reels, and he's been doing this for over 20 years, and he has clients who he started with in the business who were nobody. I mean, he started with Mila Kunis when she was just a teenager on that 70s show, and now she's like a star. And he has started with a lot of other people like that who started when they were just barely getting started, and now they're like big stars. And so he has approached some of those people for me because he had relationships with them and approached them for projects that we were doing. And they looked at the projects, and because of his relationship with them, and by extension my relationship with them, they said yes. They liked the script and they said yes. So sometimes when you're working on a project, when you're working on a set, maybe as a co-star or a smaller part, and there are some bigger stars working on the set, you can just kind of sit, don't go back to your trailer, sit on the set, be quiet, watch what's going on, absorb everything like a sponge. And if there's a moment where it's not intrusive, you can strike up a conversation. I'm not saying be obnoxious and annoying. Don't go up to people and start like impinging on their space. But if they're joking around and having a good time and you can kind of join in the conversation, why not? Be friendly. Be a friendly, fun person to be around on the set. Don't always sequester yourself away from everyone in your little trailer or in your little area, unless you have to, of course. But if you can stay and stick around and see what's going on and watch and be quiet and observe And then in between takes, you can kind of, schmooze a little bit, lurk, then lead. You start out being very, very quiet, and then you join in very, very carefully, but you join in when it's appropriate and not obnoxiously and not pushy. I have not a pushy bone in my body, I don't think. I'm just so conservative and sweet and stay in the background. So, and I've made a lot of friends that way. And the last time I was on, when I was on the set at Justified, I was shadowing the director. I hung around. I got to know everybody, all the stars, all the co-stars, all the guest stars, everybody. And by the end of the week, half of the guest stars on there and series regulars were like, they knew I was in pre-production on a couple of films. They were like, if you need anyone, you call me. I want to work with you. You seem really cool. I didn't push myself on anyone. I started off being like way in the background because I was told you are seen and not heard. You are shadow. You're supposed to be the director's shadow. You're not supposed to say anything to anyone. But when the director asks you a point blank question, you kind of got to answer them. And then, they start up a conversation with you. So you start up a conversation. And then somebody else is, you're on the sidelines. And then somebody else, comes over and starts talking, and so the next thing you know, we're all three in a conversation. And then one of the showrunners comes over and he's like talking, and then we're all in a conversation. And so, it just happens. If you're patient and you do your research and your homework, so you know who everybody is. And, my very, very first film, I was in a networking group. I guess you'd call it a mastermind group. It was all women. And Linda Gray from Dallas happened to be in that mastermind group. And I came up with the idea for that short film while I was in that mastermind group. I brought it to the group. I said, what do you think of this idea? And everyone loved it. They absolutely loved it. They said, you have to write this film. You have to make this film. So, okay, so I wrote the screenplay, and I wrote this part with Linda in mind, never thinking that she would actually do it. I just had her in my mind as I wrote the part. I think I mentioned that I always have someone in mind when I write a part. It makes it very much more specific that way. It gives the character a very specific voice. And I had her in my mind when I wrote that part to give that character that specific voice. And when I was in pre-production and planning the movie and getting ready to actually start putting it all together, I told my husband, I think I'm going to reach out to her and ask her. And he was like, yeah, she's not going to do your movie. And I said, well, I can ask. The worst she'll say is no. And he was like, okay. And I had her email address. The mastermind group had long since broken up, but we all had each other's email addresses, and we're still emailing, except she hardly ever participated in the email because she got busy, she was doing some or another. So I sent her an email telling her that I had written the script and I was in pre-production and putting the whole thing together, and I'd written a part for her, and would she be interested at all? And then I waited, and I didn't hear from her, and I didn't hear from her, and I didn't hear from her, and I thought, okay, well, that's it. And then out of the blue, she wrote me back, and she said, I'd love to do it. Just let me know when, and I'll be there. She didn't even ask to read the script. She just said, I'll do it. And it was like, okay. Wow. In fact, she never wanted to see the script until we were like a week out from doing it. She finally wrote me back and said, I guess I should look at the script if we're going to do it next week. And I said, I was going to just say, where should I send the script? And she wanted me to deliver it to her house. So I drove it up to her house and gave her the copy. And she was like, this is great. I love it. Let's do it. Then I got nervous all over again, like she was going to read the script and she wasn't going to like it. But, she loved it. And yeah, and it showed me that adage that you're always at a no until you ask. And then you may still be at a no, but you may also get a yes. So you start at no, but if you ask, that no could turn to yes. So don't be afraid to ask. Don't ever be afraid to ask, because if you don't ask, you're definitely at no. So you might as well just ask and see if you can turn the no to a yes. So that's my story. That's the process, I believe, that you go through to get a name actor. You have to have relationships, or you have to go to a casting director because they have relationships. Your script has to be really, really good. And you have to know what your vision is for the project. Let's make this very, very clear. You're not auditioning them. You're offering them the part. This is like called offer only. And you offer them the part. And I would say even at the lowest level of, like short film, web series, whatever, where you're not required to pay them, you pay them. You offer to pay them. Yeah, you don't have to do a pay or play offer, because there's certainly, if they get a better offer in the meantime, they certainly can take that. And I always make that clear. Obviously, we have this date that is flexible until I get everybody lined up. All of my crew and cast and everybody, and we all say, okay, this is the date, and we're setting it in stone now. But until we set that date in stone, it's all like, how's this date look? How's this date look? Date look good for you? Does this date look good for you? Web series and short film are pay nobody, although I pay my actors, because that is just the way I roll, because I'm a SAG-AFTRA actress. I'm a union actress, and I think actors should get paid. So I pay my actors. It causes no end of headaches with the union office for me as a production company. But I do it anyway because I believe in paying people who have worked hard to amass credits and experience, and I think that they should be compensated for that. And I think it's just good karma, and I just think it's only good. It's all good to pay people. I want to be paid for what I do. I want to pay people for what they do. If at all possible, I want to pay people for what they do.